to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles. You're watching ASEAN in Focus on today's headlines. Aftershock struck southeastern Taiwan today, including a 5.5 magnitude earthquake that was felt in the capital Taipei a day after a more powerful tremor killed one person and injured around 150 others. Meanwhile, the Manila Economic and Cultural Office, or MECO chairperson, Silvestro Bello III, today said that there are no casualties among Filipinos there in Taiwan. And Philippine Airlines has canceled 6 flights to and from Japan, scheduled for today due to bad weather. Millions of people in Japan were under evacuation warnings as Typhoon Nanmadol brought strong winds and heavy rain to the southwest of the country after making landfall overnight. President Marcos Jr. meets with the Filipino community at the New Jersey Performing Arts Theater in New Jersey, September 19, Monday, Philippine time, shortly after his arrival in the U.S. to attend the 77th United Nations General Assembly. This is the president's first visit to the U.S. as the country's leader. And about 100 volunteers went into a mangrove forest in the suburbs of Bangkok to clean the trash on World Cleanup Day. And today we have brand new videos showing new videos left after a powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake rocked Taiwan. Now this quake was reported overnight. It was so strong that it toppled buildings and broke bridges. Here's a report from Keith Ong.
A strong earthquake struck southeastern Taiwan, bringing at least 3 buildings down in a small town and tearing up roads. But forecasters later lifted the regional tsunami announcement. The USGS said the quake hit at 2:44 p.m. about 50 kilometers north of the city of Taitung at a depth of 10 kilometers. Its initial strength was given as magnitude 7.2. But the USGS later downgraded it to 6.9. Multiple aftershocks were also recorded. Japan's meteorological agency and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued tsunami advisories shortly after the quake. But both later said there was no longer a threat of high waves. In the Taiwanese town of Yuli, a 2-story building that had a 7-Eleven convenience store on the ground floor collapsed. Video footage posted by Taiwan's central news agency showed panicked residents running towards the building, which sent up a thick cloud of dust as it caved in. The Hualien Fire Department said 4 people who were trapped in the building were rescued. 2 other buildings in the town collapsed, but no one was inside them. 2 nearby bridges collapsed while 2 others were damaged. The Taiwan Railways Administration said a train derailed at Dongli Station in Hualien after it was hit by concrete from an overhead canopy that came loose during the quake. Photos released by CNA show the train's 6 carriages leaning at an angle in the station. TRA said the 20 passengers on board were evacuated and no injuries were reported. Shaking was also felt in the capital Taipei and the southwestern city of Kaohsiung, with residents posting videos of chandeliers and paintings swaying on social media. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen urged people to be vigilant for further aftershocks. A 6.6 magnitude quake hit the same region on Saturday, and there have been multiple tremors since, with minimal damage in what is a mountainous and sparsely populated rural region. But Sunday's quake was much stronger. The China Earthquake Network Center said tremors were felt in coastal areas including Fujian, Guangdong, Jiangsu, and Shanghai. Taiwan sits on the Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic activity that stretches throughout Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Basin. Most of Taiwan's population lives on the flat western coast and in the capital, Taipei. There are few international tourists in Taiwan these days because the island maintains mandatory COVID quarantine for most arrivals. That's all for now. Reporting from Taiwan, this is Keith Ong. We live in extraordinary times.
Thank you, Keith. Meanwhile, aftershocks struck southeastern Taiwan today, including a 5.5 magnitude earthquake that was felt in the capital, Taipei, a day after a more powerful tremor killed a person and injured around 150 others. The latest quake hit around 10 a.m. local time, 66 kilometers south-southwest of the coastal city of Hualien, at a depth of 13 kilometers, according to the USGS. Taiwan Central Weather Bureau put the magnitude of 5.9. Meanwhile, Manila Economic and Cultural Office, or MECO chairperson Silvestre Bello III, today said that there were no casualties among Filipinos in Taiwan and that they have not received any reports from Filipinos in Taiwan following the tremor. Rural and sparsely populated southeastern Taiwan has been rattled by a series of jolts since Saturday. The most powerful, a 6.9 magnitude quake, struck on Sunday afternoon, and it tore up roads and brought down a handful of houses in the town of Yuli, where at least a person was killed. Meanwhile, Philippine carrier Philippine Airlines has canceled 6 flights to and from Japan scheduled for today due to bad weather. Now, these flights were PR 438437, which is Manila-Nagoya, Manila, PR 426425, Manila-Fukuoka, Manila, and PR 412411, which is Manila-Osaka, Manila. The Manila International Airport Authority said that as of 9 a.m. Monday, no other carrier has canceled its flights between Japan and the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. On Sunday, public broadcaster NHK reported that 2 million residents of Japan's southern island of Kyushu have been warned to evacuate as Typhoon Nanmadol approaches the country. People were warned against high winds, storm surges, and torrential rains in the region. The Japanese government has advised people in the affected areas to find alternative accommodations that can withstand extreme weather. And as mentioned, millions of people there in Japan now are under evacuation warnings as Typhoon Nanmadol brought strong winds, heavy rains to the southwest of the country after making landfall overnight. Officials from the Japan Meteorological Agency warned that in Miyazaki Prefecture, where some areas saw more rainfall in 24 hours than they normally receive in all of September, river levels were high. The details from Dennis Liu.
Struggling through torrential rains and high winds, residents in Kagoshima seek shelter from one of the biggest typhoons yet to ever hit Japan after Nanmadol made landfall close to the city. Some from out of town struggled to return home because much of the region's transport services were suspended.
風が強くてちょっと危ないなと思ってちょっとホテルの方に来たんですけど、はい、やっぱ結構今回強い台風っていうことでやっぱちょっと家が心配だと思ってちょっと避難しました。
Trains, flights, and ferry runs were canceled until the passage of the storm, and even some convenience stores, generally open all hours and considered a lifeline in disasters, were shutting their doors. The country's weather agency issued a rare special warning, an alert that is issued only when it forecasts conditions seen once in several decades. At least 20,000 people were spending the night in shelters in Kyushu's Kagoshima and Miyazaki prefectures. More than 7 million people had been told to move to shelters or take refuge in sturdy buildings to ride out the storm. On On the ground, an official in Kagoshima's Izumi City said conditions were deteriorating rapidly by Sunday afternoon. The wind has become extremely strong. Rain is falling hard too. It's a total whiteout outside. Visibility is almost zero. In Kyushu's Minamata City, fishing boats tied up for safety bobbed on the waves as spray from the sea and bands of rain soothes the boardwalk. The storm, which was weakened slightly as it approached land, is expected to turn northeast and sweep up across Japan's main island through early Wednesday. Japan is currently in typhoon season and faces around 20 such storms a year, routinely seeing heavy rains that cause landslides or flash floods. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in extraordinary times.
In tonight's other news, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. left Manila on Sunday for New York, where he will deliver the Philippine National Statement at the 77th UN General Assembly. In his departure message, the president said his address covers the Philippines' vision of people-centered development, highlighting his administration's thrust for economic recovery, food security, and agricultural productivity. Take a look.
The UN is where the countries of the world congregate to discuss the most pressing challenges facing our people. Thus, it is important for us to participate in the General Assembly and to make certain that our voice is heard. I will be delivering our national statement on the 20th of September, in which I will outline our expectations of the United Nations and the work ahead, the role our country will play, and our contributions to strengthening the international system. The theme identified for the 77th UNGA is a watershed moment, transformative solutions to interlocking challenges, which aims to address unprecedented global trends such as the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, escalating conflicts that pose challenges to individual countries and the world community alike.
During his visit, the president will meet UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and leaders of long-standing and vital partners of the Philippines. The president said he would discuss with them the opportunities for more robust cooperation in food security, agricultural, renewable energy, and climate change, which are among his administration's key priorities. The president arrived at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey at 11:53 a.m. U.S. time, 11:53 p.m. local time. Philippine time, rather. The president flew on board a presidential plane, PR-001, which he also carried other Philippine delegates, including his wife, First Lady Marie-Louise Liza Araneta Marcos, and some cabinet members. He's scheduled to meet with the Filipino community at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center at 5 p.m. And indeed, the president did meet with the Filipino community at the New Jersey Performing Arts Theater in New Jersey shortly after his arrival in the U.S. to attend the 77th UN General Assembly. This is the president's first visit to the U.S. as the country's leader. Take a look.
Please take you. Umupo na po kayo. Mahaba-haba itong speech ko. Totoo po yung sabi ni Ambassador Babes na ang New York ay may special na kahulugan talaga yan sa aming mag-asawa. Dahil dito kami sa New York kami nagkakilala. At siguro mga tatlong taon niya ako linigawan. I would like to pay tribute to all of you and the rest to the almost 4.5 million Filipinos here in the United States for the role you play and will continue to play in advancing the interests of the Philippines and the Filipino people here in this part of the world. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Kayo po ang nagdadala ng dangal sa ating bansa. Dito sa nakaraang pandemya ay wala po akong narinig na pagpuri ng mga heads of states ng iba kung hindi Pilipino lamang ang nababanggit. Alam naman po natin na lalong-lalo dito sa East Coast ay matagal na kayo nandito nagsasakripisyo dito sa US at para lang pagandahin ang buhay ng inyong mga pamilya, para pagandahin ang buhay doon sa Pilipinas, para tulungan ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. I'm primarily here, ang sadya talaga namin dito, at ako ay magsasalita sa 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I'm also here to make sure papaliwanag natin kung nasa na ang Pilipinas at kung ano ang mga maaaring gawin dahil sa aking palagay sa paglabas natin ng pandemya at sinasabi na patapos na, ay kailangan natin ayusin ang ating ekonomiya. Kaya po ay kailangan natin makipag-partner at makipag-usap sa lahat ng iba't ibang bansa. Nang sa ganun ay makapagtulungan tayo na makalabas, makaahon dito sa sitwasyon na ating rinaranasan ngayon. Habang nandito ako, we will be working hard to get other things done for the country besides addressing the UN General Assembly on Tuesday. The same way, my father, President Ferdinand Marcos, and my mother, Imelda Romualdez Marcos, did on several occasions during his incumbency. I will share our views on a number of global concerns and the role the Philippines will play as a responsible member of the family of nations in addressing these concerns. I am hoping to be able to meet President Joseph Biden and other world leaders on the sides of the UN General Assembly. Alam niyo po, yung nakikita natin kung minsan sa television, yung dun sa malaking hall nila, nag-i-speech, sa pagkatapos po ng mga malalaking speech, ay nagkikita-kita, mag-uusap-usap kami na bilateral, multilateral, kung ano pa, mga iba't ibang meeting. Kaya't yun ay napaka-importante rin. Kaya't ginawa namin na nakapagplano kami at humingi kami ng panahon dito sa mga napunta rito para sa General Assembly. Napunta sila rito, ay sabi ko, pagkakataon na natin at hindi natin silang mapupuntahan sa kanilang bansa, dito na natin silang kakausapin. So, aside from President Biden, I think we will be able to meet with some other heads of states and, as I said, some heads of big companies. After all, our bilateral alliance with the United States is possibly as important an policy as there is in the Philippines. Our relations with the United States remain strong, and I believe we will make them stronger in the coming years. Siguro hindi natin mapapag-usapan ng mga OFW, lalong-lalo nga naranasan natin ang COVID-19 sa nakarang 2 taon. Siguro hindi maaari na pag-usapan ng OFW na hindi pag-usapan at bigyan ng special recognition ang ating mga nurses at other healthcare workers who have fought bravely on the front lines against COVID-19, especially in New York City and its environs, which was the epicenter of the pandemic when it first broke out in the spring of 2020. During this extraordinary and unexpected health crisis, many of our kababayans lost their lives in the process of fulfilling their oath to care for the sick. Filipinos nurses in the United States make up 4% of all registered nurses, but a disproportionate third of the more than 200 nurses who died from the virus were Filipinos. In New York City alone, at least 30 Filipino healthcare workers succumbed to the virus. I take this opportunity to extend my condolences to the grieving families and friends here and back home. I can promise you that this heroism of yours, of our kababayans, will not fade into obscurity. Their legacy we will make live on as they continue to inspire our kababayans to show the world what it means to truly be Filipino. So may I ask the nurses, such as the front and other frontliners, doctors, medical professionals, mga teacher, mga emergency response workers, service employees na nandito, tumayo muna kayo para mapalakpakan namin kayo.
The Filipino community was inspired by the President's message, saying they were grateful that the President recognized their heroism during the pandemic. During his speech, the President acknowledged overseas Filipino workers for their contribution to the country's economic recovery, noting that their remittances account for 40% of the more than 3.4 billion remittances. He said, we are watching all of you from afar, and our hearts are overjoyed when we see what you do to promote the Philippines to the whole world. And he said we have over 10 million kababayans all over, and as the President, he said he understands and knows fully well the significant impact of the Philippine diaspora on the motherland, especially in terms of supporting the post-pandemic recovery. The President is in the U.S. to speak before world leaders at the 77th UN General Assembly on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday, Philippine time. Meanwhile, Irene Romualdez Marcos Araneta will be President Bongbong Marcos Jr.'s special representative to attend the state funeral of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II today. She will be accompanied by her spouse, Mr. Gregorio Maria Araneta III. In a statement, Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles said Mrs. Marcos Araneta and her spouse will be attending the events for the state funeral, beginning with the lying in state of the Queen, taking place Sunday, London time. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden paid his respects at the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II in London's Westminster Hall on Sunday. Now, this was a day ahead of her state funeral. President Biden was accompanied by his wife Jill and crossed himself as they stood in the medieval hall where the casket of Britain's longest-serving monarch has been lying in state since Wednesday. A succession of world leaders have visited the catafalque in the oldest part of Britain's parliament. On September 9, President Marcos mourned the passing of Queen Elizabeth, describing the death of the 96-year-old monarch as a big loss to the entire world. Now, leaders from Russia, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Syria, and North Korea were not invited to join the 2,000 guests as their private grief has played out in the glare of global attention. A fresh opinion poll from YouGov showed the royal family's popularity has risen in the UK meanwhile. In tonight's other news, Thailand's Supreme Court dismissed a final appeal by the local subsidiary of car giant Toyota over a disputed $270 million import tax bill following a decade of legal wrangling. The case relates to Toyota Motor Thailand's importation of parts for its Prius model at a reduced tax rate between 2010 and 2012 under a Japan-Thailand trade agreement. Thai authorities said Toyota's imports were not included under that agreement and estimate the company owes roughly 10 million baht or $270 million, while the country's central tax court ruled in favor of Toyota in 2017. The decision was later overturned. On Thursday, the Supreme Court issued a final ruling against Toyota, stating the firm was not eligible for the 30% import duty reduction. In a statement, Toyota Motor Thailand said it respects the Supreme Court's ruling, but it noted that a 2012 customs ruling, later upheld by the Supreme Court, reinterpreted previously agreed import import rules, resulting in a much higher tax on TMT. The firm said they are committed to ensuring that their business practices comply with all applicable government regulations. The dispute centers on whether the imports should be classified as car parts or fully assembled cars. The 10 million baht is comprised of import duty, value-added tax, excise tax, and municipal tax, explained Customs Department senior official Chayut Komkan. Meanwhile, Vietnamese authorities have arrested the owner of a karaoke bar where a fire killed 32 people earlier this month, according to police. The blaze ripped through a 3-story entertainment venue 9 days ago in a dense residential neighborhood of Tuan An City, north of commercial hub Ho Chi Minh. It trapped customers and staff as smoke filled the staircase and blocked the emergency exit. Now, police said 17 people were injured, with many suffering broken bones after the flames forced them to jump from the roof. Bin Dong Provincial Police on Saturday confirmed in a statement that bar owner Lee An Xuan, 42, was arrested a day earlier and would face criminal charges related to breaching fire prevention regulations. He will be held in custody for 4 months while the investigation continues. While 15 of the injured have been released from hospital, 2 of the most seriously hurt are still receiving medical treatment. The bodies of the 32 people killed have been handed over to their families. Firefighters initially struggled to enter the building because of the fire's intensity and had to knock down part of a wall to get inside. 60 people were inside the 30-room bar when the fire erupted, and 8 people were found dead in the bar's toilet. The news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. We'll be back. Welcome back. About 100 volunteers went into a mangrove forest in the suburb of Bangkok to clean the trash on World Cleanup Day. Take a look.
Amount of trash that we collect in total is 1,660 kilograms. Yeah.
So I have to admit, I thought it could be less, but it is so painful when I see this amount of trash.
Maybe we should stop throwing away plastic into the ocean, and then it may ruin the sea creatures.
All kind of things. It's really, you know, it's really anything. It's you know, all the wrappers from any kind of food or drink or and as you know, in Thailand many things come wrapped in plastic, and even drinks, you know, they put it in a plastic bag and with a straw, right?
So it's not just send a message for the people that you should reducing the plastic single use, but also send a message to the company which produce the single-use plastic product to help to reduce or find the solution together to not make the plastic pollution happen again.
Within an hour's time, people have collected more than 1.6 tons of rubbish, mainly plastic products, including water bottles and food wrappers. Part of the trash will be sent to the recycle center. Thank you for joining us here on ASEAN in Focus. We'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.